Lesson 3, what are the Gospels? 7 essential ideas. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about our approach and the resources we're using and how we're going about doing it, and then we've also talked about how we're structuring this course, let's now move to talking about some of the core ideas that come with answering this primary question of what are the Gospels. So there are 7 essential ideas that I want to introduce to you right now. These come directly out of Strauss's Four Portraits book, and I thought they were just so good that I wanted to make sure that they were included right up front with the course. These are really 7 main points to remember about when we study the Gospels. So let's go through these 7 together. The first main point in answering the question of what are the Gospels is that the 4 Gospels were written to provide 4 unique portraits of Jesus Christ. And I like that phrase. I like that term portrait, because what it means is it gives you a snapshot of a particular aspect. You know, if you think about a portrait or a picture, you could have a picture of the same person in lots of different contexts, and they would look very different, but it's the same person throughout. So the Gospels provide 4 unique portraits about Jesus. This is a really important part. We'll come back to this repeatedly throughout this course. Okay, number 2, the Synoptic Gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, and Luke, have many stories in common, and they share a similar language. The Gospel of John is written in a different style and provides unique material and a more theological presentation. So when we talk about the Gospels, we need to understand how they're categorized. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called the Synoptic Gospels because they have so many similarities about them. And we'll unpack that in our next module on how we got the Gospels. But just knowing at the beginning that Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called the Synoptics, and John is very different from them, but yet provides another complementary portrait of Christ, gives us the full picture of the Gospels. But knowing that Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called the Synoptics, and because they share so many aspects, is an important part of understanding the Gospels. So number 3, the gospel genre itself can be identified as this. So this is what a gospel is. It's a historical narrative motivated by theological concerns. Each gospel writer had a particular purpose in mind and particular themes they wanted to develop. So we want to remember a couple things. Yes, the Gospels are 100% historical, but they are not merely historical. They are historical, but they have a desire to persuade about them. They're motivated by theological concerns. They're not neutral. They want to persuade the reader. But that does not mean that that compromises the historical value of them. So they are historical narratives, but they are motivated by theological concerns. That's the third point. Number 4, the Gospels were written with reference to the needs and concerns of particular communities within the church. That's the original audience they were written to, but also with an eye toward their wider distribution among first century churches. So these were written both to the original audiences, but we don't even know who they are, but they were also intended to be used in the church at large. And so here we are, thousands of years later, still referring to these same gospel accounts. Number 5, the Gospels were best read vertically, which vertically means following the plot of each narrative from beginning to end. The Holy Spirit inspired 4 distinct Gospels with unique themes and purposes. So this is important because God did not inspire one meta-narrative, right? He inspired 4 separate portraits or 4 separate accounts, and that's what it means to read them vertically. It means to read Mark from beginning to end and to focus exclusively on the portrait of Christ that Mark gives us. The same would be for Matthew or for Luke or for John. We don't want to blend them together. We want to read them vertically because that's how we get that full portrait from that particular author. Number 6, reading the Gospels horizontally. And what that means is comparing their accounts with one another enables the reader to see more clearly each Gospel's particular themes and theology. So reading the Gospels vertically means reading one Gospel as if it were the only one. But reading Gospels horizontally, that's what the harmony of the Gospels does for us, is it puts them side by side, and then we can read across them for when it comes to the same account, so we can get a more full picture. So we don't want to forsake either one. Both are very helpful, but we have to remember that the Spirit inspired each Gospel individually, so we want to maintain those distinctives. Number 7, Our last point here, and I kind of already said this, but harmonizing the Gospels into a single story, what that means would be like blending them all together into one meta-gospel, risks distorting each gospel writer's unique contribution. Harmonizing is helpful when seeking to answer historical questions about the life of Jesus. So that kind of talks about the risk that we take. If we were to just say, well, there's 4 gospels, let's just blend them all together into one story, we miss each one's distinctives if we do that. God did not inspire just one meta-gospel. He inspired 7 of them. So those are 7 of the key ideas we're going to come back to again and again when it comes to this question of what are the Gospels. So let's go ahead and move on to our next video where we are going to now begin to introduce these 4 Gospels. So let's do that in our next video where we will take an introduction to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.